is Mertes. Welcome to Biotech Atelier. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. All right, you can see my screen right now, right?
Correct, yes.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. This is Phillip Mertes speaking from Hamburg, Germany, and I'm really delighted to walk you through a very, very fascinating topic today. It's the topic of digital biomarkers, and I'm not quite sure where you're from, what your background is, but my keynote lecture now is tailored to physicians, to pharmaceutical executives, to anyone working in the field of digital health, because I think what we're now seeing here in this field is really a big moonshot. It's a new kind of biomarkers that is emerging, and I will help you walk you through it step by step during the next 25 minutes. So feel free to ask your questions here in the chat whenever you have one, and I would say let's go ahead without further ado. So the topic of today is seizing digital biomarkers in DTX, future trends, applications, and opportunities. And whenever we talk about the future, we come to a certain point. And this is the point that we need to recognize that we humans are very, very bad at predicting the future ahead. But, you know, we're all good at saying what the lottery numbers were from last Saturday, but it's very hard to point out what the lottery numbers for next Saturday are. And when it comes to healthcare, it's the same. We're very good at telling how we feel right now, but it's really hard to predict how our health will change during the next weeks or years. And why is this like this? Why are we humans so bad at predicting the future? So the first point is we all have biases. When we receive new information, we think it needs to fit into the world we already know and the world we believe that is true. But that's really not the case when it comes to new technologies, to new application fields, and to new opportunities like in healthcare right now. And the second thing is we're very, very bad at synthesizing lots of data. We tend to rely on what we think we already know. And when we make decisions, it's really hard to estimate all the data that is behind. And there's a third point, and this is that we are very bad at estimating which factors are the most important ones. So we are hardwired to be just good enough to survive, and coping with lots of data is really not the case that we are hardwired for. So let's break it down. It's very hard for us to really have a look into the future. And when it comes to healthcare and predicting future health events, this is a big problem that really needs to be solved. And how we do it these days, in these modern days, is we Google it. We ask Google, we ask other technologies, how can we get better at predicting future events, like in healthcare? And that's what the whole digital health community right now is doing across the world. And technology is one of the major pillars, is one of the major contributors. And what we're all working right now is we're working on the question, how can we build powerful technologies that can help us predict future healthcare events? Let me give you a little bit of an outline after introducing you right now into the fascinating topic, what we will cover today. So at first, we will have a look at the very, very confusing language of digital health. I will walk you through what digital biomarkers are and what biomarkers are in general. And thirdly, and this is the most important point for all of you out there right now, we will talk about why this is relevant to me, whether you are a physician, a patient, a pharma executive, or a policymaker. I know that Biotech Atelier always accumulates a lot of policymakers as well. And for you guys, I have a special point at the end of my talk. So secondly, we will navigate through the digital biomarker landscape. I will give you some very interesting looks into trends, applications, and the evidence behind, because when we talk about scientific breakthroughs, we always need to have a closer look at the evidence that is behind. And third, we will talk about the big topic of today, the digital biomarkers that are integrating more and more into the DTX space. What are the future opportunities and how can we leverage it now? That's what my lecture now will be all about. And let's jump right in now. So the language of digital health is quite confusing, and this relates to 4 points. At first, we always talk about new technologies and new products. We see a big convergence of sensors, artificial intelligence, digital technologies that now bring new opportunities. And for healthcare, this is quite another language, a different technology-driven and data-driven language. Secondly, we have new players and new roles in the previous days, we had physicians, we had the insurers, we had the providers, and now big tech is coming. Google, Amazon, Facebook, the major contributors to healthcare innovation right now, besides small startup companies that learn to utilize big data for health-related purposes. And they partner with the old boys in town, with pharmaceutical companies. We see new value chains. Data is becoming an integral part of the value creation chain, like in the digital economy more and more, especially in healthcare. And when we look at all those changes, we always have a global perspective. We don't look to small regulatory approved markets. We look, when we talk about digital products and services, we need to bridge physical distance and borders to scale globally our technology. So the language is quite confusing, the language of digital healthcare. And one of those classical terms here that we always use right now in my talk here is the term of biomarkers. I'm not quite sure who of you out there is familiar with the term of biomarkers, but the biomarker, according to the classical FDA definition, is a piece of anatomical, physiological, or biochemical data that is used more or less from within the human body to diagnose a disease or develop a treatment plan for a patient. And there are two biomarkers we all know. The first one, that's blood. We know this quite well. And this one, since COVID hit us all, we can rely to this as well. So classical biomarkers are normally derived from within the human body. And this leads to four of the biggest shortcomings of patient care and traditional clinical trials. We always want to point out those two aspects regarding the patient care and clinical trials, so developing drugs, the drug development process. When it comes to traditional clinical trials and traditional patient care, we see that they are very, very episodic. They require in-person visits, so the patient needs to go to the clinical site or to the doctor's office. They are heavily relying on subjective assessments, which I will point out in a few minutes, and mostly they are relying on paper forms. And how this can look like, I think many of you guys out there know this as well. You can see here the standard assessment test for COPD, a respiratory disease. COPD is diagnosed, you see here, this is the CAT score by GSK, developed in 2009. COPD is diagnosed with such a scoring system. You see there is a Likert scale from 0 to 5, which asks the patients are never cough to I cough all the time. Patients need to, or physicians need to rate from 0 to 5. Then the ratings are heavily relying on subjective ratings, like my chest does feel tight at all, or my chest feels very, very tight. And it's really, really hard to distinguish here. And in the end, you have a scoring here, which does not really reflect qualitative data. Another very interesting example for traditional diagnosis of diseases is the unified Parkinson's disease rating scale. Patients are asked to tap their fingers as fast as they can for 10 seconds. And in the end, you receive a scoring system here. You see it there as well. It's a very, very limited number of measures. The measures are very, very much relying on subjective rating options. And in the end, it's not really patient-centric. Not quite sure how it is from your side, but it's very, very hard to do this 10 seconds as fast as you can. Another, and the last example here is the Alzheimer's disease assessment score. So when you diagnose Alzheimer's disease, you have a scoring system that reflects spontaneous speech. And you need to it's really hard to measure. It's heavily relying on subjective assessments. And you see that there's no continuous measurement over hours, days, or even weeks within 1 year. So this leads to a big problem that we are now facing and that we are now learning to solve more and more. We have an urgent need. We have an urgent need to uncover previously invisible insights with longitudinal data, as traditional patient care and the conduction of clinical trials is very episodic and fragmented. It's based on subjective paper-based ratings. And this is the data picture that you have now. And what we're now learning more and more with digital biomarkers is to derive novel insights through data that is collected remotely and this is very important, within real world and everyday life scenarios. So what does that mean now for our work here? We are at the point where we need to ask ourselves, how would the biomarker of the future look like? And with the advancements in new technologies, there is a very, very new and entirely new class of biomarkers right now emerging, and they are called digital biomarkers. Digital biomarkers, according to the FDA definition, are developed from data that is analyzed using advanced analytics or machine learning to extract previously invisible insights. So we don't look into, we don't need to extract anything from within the body, but we analyze data. And this is what we call digital biomarkers. Now, what does this mean? What is the application? What is the evidence? And where does this trend lead to? Let's come to the second pillar of my talk. So let's imagine the biomarker of the future. The biomarker of the future, and this is the red line that lies between all the talks that we have heard today. The biomarker of the future is one thing. It's very, very patient-centered. It needs to be, because it needs to enable us to reinvent the entire patient journey, from how we treat diseases until how we manage those diseases. So when we boil it down, coming from the classical definition of a traditional biomarker to a new one, then the definition becomes very, very clear. Digital biomarkers, as well as traditional ones, need to be objective. They need to deliver objective, unbiased data analytics, all of this with non-invasive and real-time insights, and the best of it, with minimum patient involvement. So it needs to be as easy as working and using our smartphone in our everyday life. How does this look like in healthcare, you might ask yourself right now. So let's imagine the patient perspective. Let's imagine we are a patient and we are coming now into the doctor's office. We have just received our diagnosis, and what happens next? When we leave the door here, you have a small door here at the end. When we leave the door, what happens after leaving the doctor's office? Mostly there happens not that much until we sometimes need to call the emergency. So we are now seeing with digital biomarkers that we are able to reinvent the entire patient journey, from, like we always say, from traditional sick care, managing the sick patient, to a much more preventive and prognostic definition of healthcare. So what we're seeing now is that digital biomarkers integrate across the whole patient journey, starting at the prevention phase when we talk about healthy patient, coming to a very, very early screening of risk factors, to precision diagnosis after being diagnosed, and more, and this will be one of the biggest topics of the future of biotech, to personalized treatments, to personalized care delivery, and remote patient engagement. So what we see here is that with digital biomarkers, we are able to cost effectively target healthy individuals, do pre-diagnosis, then help him across with the precision diagnosis to personalized treatments, and really enable personalized care delivery and remote engagement. And this is what digital biomarkers are very, very fascinating for when we look into the future. They are able to really reinvent the whole patient journey, from prevention to early screening to precision diagnosis to personalized treatments and personalized care delivery, as well as, and this is a very important factor, we just heard it in the previous talk, to remote engagement. But digital biomarkers are not just a very new trend when it comes to patient care. It's also quite relevant when we look into the field of clinical research, from phase 1 to phase 3 to the launch until the commercial phase. Digital biomarkers really help us to deliver an early safety monitoring, enrich clinical trial data, help to validate clinical endpoints, and then in the commercial phases, help to drive optimal product adoption and generate real-world evidence, one of the biggest topics. Here on the right, you can see a very nice and interesting study where that covers the question where digital biomarkers are right now integrated into industry-sponsored interventional studies. And this starts in dermatology to mental health, hematology, and cardiology as well. So there's a very, very broad use from phase 1 to phase 3 until the commercial. So whenever we talk about digital biomarkers, we need to have two things in mind. At first, it's the patient care, and the patient care can be reinvented across the patient journey. And the second thing is that it can be applied in clinical research as well. So we always have those two pillars, the patient and the clinical research side. So when we look into new applications of digital biomarkers. We ask ourselves, what are real world and what are examples that are in the market today? And I've brought to you three very interesting digital biomarkers that are applied right now in clinical trials or in patient care. At first, the technology is camera vision. So using a classical smartphone camera to help deduct insights from within a patient's movement disorder. The second thing is touch biomarkers. How can we leverage on a medical grade, so clinical evidence, how can we leverage patient data from type, just typing and touching our smartphones? And the third thing, and this is the field that we're working on with Evocal Health, is the field of vocal biomarkers. So let's jump right in. At first, I have brought to you the example of Kaya Health. Kaya Health offers a proven MSK care solution that combines human care with superior technology. You see it here on the upper side. It's an integrated care model, a blended care with telemedical and on-site care. It delivers personalized therapy. And this is all based on a digital biomarker that helps us to better understand a patient's movement and derives insights from within those data that are just derived from within the camera of a smartphone. Very, very interesting. I have brought to you the link here. Very interesting to have a look at Kaya Health. A second very, very fascinating topic is the company NQ Medical, a Boston-based digital biomarker company, and NQ Medical is improving lives of patients, enabling the discovery and development of digital touch biomarkers. So put in very, very simple words, they analyze how patients type in WhatsApp or how they use their smartphones. They analyze typing patterns and deduct insights for cognitive impairment, for early Parkinson's disease, and for remote monitoring in Parkinson's disease. And the best of it, it's evidence-based. The technology is quite far. I know the founder and the CEO very, very well, a good friend of mine. And that's a very, very interesting field, showing how we can use everyday technology on a medical grade. And third, I want to introduce you to what we are doing at Evocal Health. So our big mission is we're unlocking the human voice, so the spoken word, as a biomarker for health. And this might sound to many people of you like rocket science, like moonshots, or like some kind of health esoteric, but let me show you that that is not the case. The human voice is one of the most complex systems of our body. And what many people don't know is that verbal signal processing, so the production of my voice right now, requires a large set of tasks for the coordination of different organs, muscles, and sensory nerves. And what research has shown during the past 20 years of fundamental research is that diseases significantly impact the physiology of major sound-producing systems. There are more than 150 core publications, and with machine learning and artificial intelligence in behind, we're now able to really unlock and analyze massive amounts of patient voice data to deduct insights from within the human voice that help us better understand a patient's disease progression. So what we have done is we have developed a platform technology that enables us to analyze, collect, and monitor the human voice within less than 20 seconds of spoken word. We analyze 150 specific voice parameters for respiratory, cardiovascular, and neurodegenerative diseases. It's a CE-certified medical device, and the big value proposition that we deliver to our pharmaceutical and biotech and medtech clients is that we deliver more precise information about a patient's disease progression using only the human voice and a casual smartphone. So it's as easy and engaging like talking to Siri or Alexa, and the application field is quite clear. We want to head into remote patient monitoring, and we are now in decentralized clinical trials and in patient self-management. Our company is award-winning. We're awarded by very, very big partners with a big track record in science and innovation, like the Express Alliance of Pandemic Innovators, like Plug and Play, German Accelerator, and many, many more. We're in cardiovascular, neurodegenerative, and respiratory diseases. And this shows where we are heading with digital biomarkers. Digital biomarkers, whether it is voice, touch, or the MSK solution, there are always four pillars. At first, digital biomarkers help us to sense disease progression. Secondly, they help us to analyze. Thirdly, they help us to predict. And this is where the topic of digital biomarkers really becomes big, predicting disease trajectories, and then all with the goal to act based on real-time evidence for more personalized and individualized treatments. So sensing objective unbiased data, analyzing non-invasive insights, predicting disease trajectories, and acting with real-time evidence and all of this with minimum patient involvement. That's what all digital biomarkers are about to do in the future. All those technologies are in an early stage, and what we're now seeing is that more and more companies are building clear evidence behind, building under the regulatory framework that they work. And this is the point where we now see more and more digital biomarkers that are integrated into DTX, into digital therapeutics. So what are the future opportunities and how can we leverage it now? When we look at classical DTX, there's a very, very familiar scheme. We combine three things. At first, there's a self-management function, like a blood pressure diary. Secondly, there is a guideline-based recommendations, like activity and posture movement recommendations. And third, there's educational content, like text, videos, and podcasts. What we're now seeing with the next generation of DTX is that they integrate more and more digital biomarkers that have a diagnostic component. We combine electronic patient-reported outcomes, so-called EPROMs, evidence-based diagnostic components, I highlight here the evidence, digital biomarkers, remote monitoring, and a telemedical consultation. And what we're doing there is we're integrating many aspects of patient care within just one application. That's what many providers are right now doing, many manufacturers, but we need the policymakers, and that's what I just introduced in the beginning as well. So we need policymakers to really open the doors on a regulatory perspective. Opening the doors, there we have a very, very interesting example, and this was the Digital Care Act in Germany that came out in 2020. So this was the German Minister of Healthcare. Now he's minister, he isn't the minister anymore. He went through the COVID pandemic, but what he did before the COVID pandemic is he brought the Digital Care Act into law. And what the Digital Care Act was and how you all can learn from a regulatory point from this example, I want to highlight to you now. So the Digital Care Act was accompanied by a national digital health strategy. Policymakers prioritized and led a national digital health strategy that ended in this Care Act. Right now, 80 million citizens in Germany, so it's 74 million that are insured in the statutory health insurance, are now able to claim the reimbursement of a digital health application. So we have a reimbursement claim here in Germany for nearly 70 to 80 million citizens for digital health apps. And it was accompanied by a public innovation process. So it was excellently facilitated by government officials. Insurers, manufacturers, providers were all part of a public innovation process, which included transparent and guidelines and a public hearing. So it was quite important to have all stakeholders involved in this very, very big project from the very beginning. Now there is the so-called DiGA-Verzeichnis. It's a DiGA directory where all the applications are registered. You see it's in stroke, after stroke care, in depression, in cancer treatment, in alcohol abuse treatment, for tinnitus, for insomnia, for many, many different indications. It's in numbers, it's in 30 applications right now in Germany that are reimbursable. And what are the results? The results are quite interesting. So health apps are beginning to establish themselves in healthcare. The commercial traction is still a little bit low, but it's significantly growing. We had now 4,500 SHI reimbursable healthcare reimbursements in the last 1.5 years. And the results were that the integration into the healthcare systems needs to be optimized. Patients see that there are clear benefits. Manufacturers all still perceive the requirements as quite high, especially in regard to study design and data protection, and physicians, especially the younger cohorts, really accept the DiGA as a very, very vital part of remote patient care and of the whole patient journey treatment. And the health insurance companies, they are, of course, afraid of the costs, but however, they are steering against them. But what we see here in Germany is that there is a significant need that from a patient and from a physician perspective, digital therapeutics will become much more important in the future, and that many companies are right now working on not just providing content, providing information, but also integrating digital biomarkers that are medically grade. So it's a very interesting topic right now. We're heading into a future that is quite clear and quite promising. And I'm really fascinated by this topic. I encourage every one of you to really have a look into the field of digital biomarkers when looking to DTX. And I hope that my talk right now, those 25 minutes, helped you to gain a better understanding about what is going on right now. So you can see my LinkedIn here. You can follow us from Evocal. You can just scan the QR codes on the right, and I'm happy to answer your questions right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. A wonderful talk and just an amazing concept for your company. I'm like truly amazed. This is the first time that I've actually heard about you guys prior to doing my research before this session, and it's really amazing. We do have one comment. I guess it's not really a question, but it just says if you could further elaborate, how can you use the voice for digital phenotyping?
Yeah, right. So what is the stage of voice technology at this point in time? So what we're now able to do quite well is we're able to really detect whether or not there are pathologic voice changes. And what we're right now doing is we go into those very big studies where we evaluate which of those 150 parameters that we analyze right now are directly correlated to cardiovascular, neurodegenerative, and respiratory diseases. So talking in TLRs, technology readiness levels, we are now at stage 3 to 4. We expect the technology to be marketable to patients in, let's say, 1.5 to 2.5 years. It's always hard to estimate or to give exact estimates here, but we're quite well progressing. We're one of 2 companies in the world that are working in this fascinating fields. And we have a platform technology behind, and what we're now bringing is we're bringing the clinical evidence in. It's in numbers. It's 14 different indication fields. So it's a quite broad clinical development pipeline, and we always encourage people from pharmaceutical, from medtech, from biotech side to walk or go the way with us, integrate our technology right now, and really see the clear insights at an early point in time.
Perfect, thank you. And one question here from our friend Georgie, whom you know, he's asking, how do you see this whole field progressing in the next 5 years?
Yeah, excellent question. Thank you. So when we looked into the past, so we saw there are many DTXs right now coming that have a classical script. They are guideline based. They integrate recommendations, and they integrate more and more content, like videos, like apps, like text. But from a patient perspective, why should I use a DTX when there are websites as well? So in the end, I think the important thing is to really integrate objectifiable measures that enable us to continuously measure our health. So to see when health decreases, when it increases. So I think this is one of the biggest thing in the DTX space, having the integration of measurable, objectifiable, quantitative measures that will be the big point for DTX in the future. The question might also be who will be leading this change in DTX. I think it might be pharma, it will be big tech, and we see there's massive investments right now from Google, from Amazon. Amazon just acquired One Medical, 3 billion, one of the biggest acquisition in time for Amazon. And not quite sure who will be the provider of those interesting technologies, but yeah, there's many interesting things to come.
Indeed, thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to seeing what the future holds. And thank you for contributing to our program. It was really nice to hear you talk, and I hope that we'll see you again maybe next year with an even bigger update on your company. And good luck to you. We are moving on. You're very much welcome.